Okay, good evening, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock. So I'll now bring this special public workshop to order. Clerk, can I have roll call?
Of course. Chair Kurth. Vice Chair Harriman.
Here.
Commissioner Wells.
Here.
Commissioner Cook-Askins.
Present.
And Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
All right.
So tonight, the invocation this evening will be provided by Commissioner Wells, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Commissioner Cook-Askins.
If you just bow your heads for a moment. Dear Lord, we, the Victorville Planning Commission and staff, ask for your guidance during this special workshop meeting. Please guide us to understand and make the best decisions for the residents and the businesses of the city of Victorville. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your right hand over your heart. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I please hear any special instructions for the audience at this time?
Yes. Thank you, Vice Chair Harriman. Pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order N-29-20, this meeting is being conducted via Zoom. The Planning Commission strives to carry out its meetings in an atmosphere of professionalism with full participation by members of the body and the public. This meeting is also being interpreted into Spanish. People wishing to hear the meeting in Spanish can access the Spanish language audio room by clicking interpretation. It looks like a globe in your toolbar. And we're actually asking all members to use the interpretation service. So when you click on interpretation, you'll actually see that there's an English channel and a Spanish channel. So you'll navigate there and either click English or click Spanish. And we'll give you guys a few minutes to go ahead and do that. And Karam is going to recite these instructions in Spanish as well.
Thank you, Mel. Gracias, Melissa. La ciudad se enorgullece de brindar servicios de interpretación para todos nuestros residentes hispanohablantes. Para acceder a la interpretación en su computadora, haga clic en el icono del globo terráqueo subtitulado Interpretación y ubicado en la parte baja de su pantalla. Ahora seleccione Español como idioma. Para acceder a la interpretación en su teléfono inteligente, haga clic en el icono con los 3 puntos subtitulados más y ubicado en la parte baja de su pantalla. Ahora haga clic en la opción que dice Interpretación de idiomas y seleccione Español como idioma. Una vez que seleccione el idioma, debería poder escuchar a la voz de Gabriela sobre el audio en inglés. Si está distraído por el audio en inglés, seleccione la opción Silenciar audio original cuando seleccione Español como idioma en su computadora o teléfono inteligente. Si selecciona esta opción, el audio original será silenciado y solo escuchará a Gabriela. Los servicios de interpretación solo están disponibles para quienes asisten a través de la aplicación de Zoom. ya sea en su computadora o teléfono inteligente. Si ha llamado y necesita servicios de interpretación, por favor considere cambiarse a la aplicación de Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa and Karen. We're gonna get started with the public workshop on the city's general plan update. City Planner Scott Webb, please lead off the discussion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Harriman. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us online and for participating in helping shape the future development of our city. I am pleased to introduce the first public workshop dedicated to the development of an updated land use element of the city's general plan. This is the second of a series of general plan public workshops that we are conducting this year. As mentioned in our first workshop of the housing element, the city is required to maintain an updated general plan that complies with the latest state laws. Helping guide us through the land use update and facilitating the interpretive and interactive workshop today is our consultant team from City Place Planning, Patricia Blumen and Claudia Tedford. Without further ado, Claudia, Patricia, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be here this evening. I'm looking forward to having a great session with you all tonight. Let's see, I'm going to share my screen and pull up the presentation. Okay. Let's see. There we go. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Great, thank you so much. Okay. Some of this has already been taken care of, so I will just point out for those of you who are watching, if you would like to speak, you can raise your hand, and we'll have some exercises where we'll be asking you to type in chat, and that's the little bubble to do that. Just want to go over briefly what we're going to be talking about this evening. The first thing that we're going to do is just hear a little bit about the folks who are participating with us this evening. We just have a couple of quick polling questions just to get us going. Then I'm going to give you a brief overview of what a general plan is. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about what a land use element is, since that is the focus of our discussion this evening. And then we're really hoping to have a lot of community and public input during our visioning session. And that's where we're really going to be looking for you all to let us know what is important to you as we move forward in this land use element update. And then we'll do a quick wrap up, and then we'll turn it back over to you. As Scott mentioned, I'm Patricia Blumen with City Place Planning, and we're part of the team, a consultant team that is doing the general plan update. Harrison Associates, they're doing the housing element update, and you may have participated in the housing element workshop. I guess it was almost 2 weeks ago. They're also doing the safety element update and creating a new environmental justice element. And they're also the ones who are going to be doing the environmental work on this update for the CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act. And City Place Planning, we're working on the land use element, doing a little bit of assistance with the housing element update. And in addition to myself this evening, we've got Claudia Tedford, who's the principal of City Place Planning, Katie Matchett, and Gabriella Mulatto. And she is the person who's doing our interpreting for us this evening. So the first thing that we're going to do is stop, and we'd like to hear a little bit about you. So we've got a couple of polling questions, and Melissa, if you want to bring up the first question, that would be great.
Okay.
So what we'd like to know is, what is your favorite thing to do in Victorville? And we've got a list of things. If one of those is one of your favorite things to do, please click on that. And if you've got something else that is not on there that is one of your favorite things to do, you can write it in chat, and we'll be monitoring the chat as well.
All right, it looks like we have we're close to 10 participants replying in our survey.
Okay.
Our survey is anonymous, so don't feel pressured if your name won't pop up, but we really would enjoy everyone's participation. So we'll leave it up for about 30, 45 more seconds.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are we voting on this? I'm not seeing that on the screen, or is that for our audience?
So it's only for the audience this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Melissa.
Got it.
We're assuming, our Commissioner or Vice Chair Harriman, that you love everything about Victorville.
Well, I do love the parks the best. I can say that.
Nice.
All right. We're going to leave it over at about 15 more seconds. All right. So it looks like everyone that responded, the highest thing people enjoy doing in Victorville is going to eat at a local restaurant.
Great. And the Mojave River Walk came in second?
Looks like it.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much. Now we're going to have another couple of polling questions, just hearing a little bit more about our attendees. So the first thing we're going to ask you is if you are a resident. And it's just a yes or no.
And we'll leave this open for about a minute or so. All right, about 15 more seconds for everyone to respond. It looks about like 60% of people have responded. All right, I'm going to end the poll.
All right. So it's pretty closely split. Very good. We've got another question for you. Are you a business owner in Victorville?
We'll leave it open for about a minute, but much faster response on this question. All right, about 15 more seconds. It looks like Most of our attendees do not own a business in Victorville.
Okay. Very good. And we have one more question for you. And that is, are you in the development or real estate community? Just trying to get a sense of who all is participating this evening.
And we will leave this open for about a minute or so. About 10 more seconds. All right.
Very good. Thank you so much. It looks like we have a good representation of residents, businesses, and folks who are interested in development and real estate. So that's great. We always like to get a broad spectrum if possible. So thank you for that. Let's see. Now I'm going to move into just talking a little bit about what a general plan is. And some of you may be aware of this, but for those of you who aren't, it's just a little bit of background information to provide some context for our discussions this evening. A general plan is a document that's required by state law. Every jurisdiction has to have one, whether it's a city or a county. And an easy way to think of a general plan is it's a blueprint for a community's future development. Just like you have a blueprint for a house to construct a house, that's what a general plan helps a community do. And it is made of elements or chapters, if you will, like a book, but they're called elements for a general plan, including land use, housing, safety. Environmental justice is a new element that's required for many communities, including Victorville's. Circulation, conservation, noise, and open space. And so just like a house, when you're building a house, that blueprint, you don't always see all of the systems that are at work or that are required to have a functioning home, but they're all very important and they all work together. And that's really what a general plan does. It does provide that blueprint so that you know how to grow, how to develop in the future. And as I mentioned, the elements that we're updating as part of the general plan element, as part of this general plan update, is the land use, housing, safety, and providing the new environmental justice element. The other 4 elements that are listed here are not being updated now, but they're very important. And we need to make sure that all of the elements, including the ones that are updated, they all have to work together and they all have to be internally consistent. So we do pay attention to the entire general plan, not just the standalone elements. So the main topic of our discussion tonight is the land use element. And what is a land use element? And the easiest way to describe it, a land use element is it really is the document that helps to guide future development in the city, especially related to land uses, where the various land uses should be located within the community. If you didn't have a land use element and communities were allowed to just build wherever, you could have residential next to industrial, you could have uses that are kind of mixed up. It would be very difficult to plan for services and roadways and things. So the land use element is really important in that respect. And not only does it indicate where various land uses should be located, but it also indicates how dense Density refers to residential development, low density versus high density development, and then intensity, how much of a use is on a particular property. So if you think about a suburban community as opposed to, for instance, downtown Los Angeles, there's a big difference in terms of density and intensity. And that's one of the things that the land use element will identify. And a really important role for the land use element is it provides the basis for zoning. And zoning is the document that regulates that development of the land uses over the course of time. And while all elements are technically equal, you can see why the land use element really does play a key role in the future development of a city. And just like all of the other elements, it interacts with all of them, but it's really especially linked to the housing and the circulation elements. And I'll talk about the housing element in just a couple of minutes. So why is the city updating the land use element right now? There isn't a state mandate that you update a land use element in any particular amount of time, but what cities do is they want to make sure that it remains current and that it remains relevant. And so some of the things that we look at are addressing changing trends. And as you're very well aware, there have been quite a few changes going on in the last, since the last general plan, the land use element was updated about 10, 12 years ago. One of them is the slowdown of housing production due to the Great Recession. There was significant slowdown, and I'm sure you've all seen some housing developments where they had started construction and they just stopped, and in some cases never to be started up again. And housing is now starting to get going again, but that was a significant change and a significant trend, especially since things had really been booming before the Great Recession. Another trend that is important to cities, you might not think of it that way, but it really is, and that's the shift to online shopping or e-commerce. Just a couple little bits of a couple of facts. In 2000, just barely 20 years ago, less than 1% of all of the retail shopping that was done in the United States was done online. And by 2010, it was up to about 4%. By the end of 2019, right before the COVID pandemic hit, it was up to approximately 14%. And now at the end of 2020, after COVID has been in force here for about almost a year, it's up to almost 22%. So if you think about the impact that that has on communities, if people are shopping online, then they're not shopping in the local stores. And I know that you've all heard of and know of stores that are going out of business, national chains, local businesses. Even heard this morning, Fry's Electronics is closing their doors. So it does have an impact on communities. And that's one of the things that cities are looking at is the amount of commercial land that they have available. Is it located in the right place? Is it the right kind of intensity? Really important factors. Another thing is that more people are working from home now. And that was starting to be the case before COVID. And now with COVID, way more people are working from home than used to work from home. And that has some implications for land use and future development in the city as well. There are also some other issues relating to the environment. So the state of California has a variety of regulations with regard to the environment. One of them is a state mandated requirement that cities and counties have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions or GHGs. And that has an impact on, or how cities are built, how cities are developed, really does have an impact on the greenhouse gas emissions, especially as it relates to vehicle use. And that's something that we'll be touching on here in just a couple more minutes. And another reason why the city is updating the land use element is to address changing community issues. It could be changing issues, opportunities. What is important for the community. And as we know, that changes over time. And so we want to make sure that as we're preparing this land use element update, that we really understand what's important to the community. And that's really going to be the focus of the community input later on in this workshop. Another key piece is that the land use element works very closely with the housing element, and the housing element is being updated right now. As I mentioned, you may have participated in the workshop a couple of weeks ago, and the housing element does have to be updated on a state mandated cycle, and the city's in the process of updating its housing element now. It has to be done by October of this year, and it will be in place for another 8 years when the city is required to update it again. So accommodating the housing that's required as part of the housing element is obviously a very important piece of the land use element. And then another thing is that we're looking at future growth projections, and you really want to be aware of what's happening in the future. There are some cities that we worked with that really aren't growing or changing very much. They're pretty much built out, and that's not the case for your community. So those growth projections are really important. So I'm going to jump to that next. Here's a bar graph that shows you the growth trend in Victorville. In the blue, this is the growth trend, and then the gold are the future forecasts. So you can see barely 40 years ago, in 1980, there were only approximately 14,000 residents in Victorville. By 1990, that had jumped up to 40,000. By 2000, it was 64,000. And this is a pretty big jump. This is a 5-year jump, not a 10-year jump for this light blue. You're up to 87, almost 88,000. By 2010, almost 116,000. And there was another good jump in the 5 years between 2010 and 2015. And by 2020, it leveled off a little bit. And I think a lot of that had to do with the recession, things slowing down, recovering from the recession. But right now in 2020, you're at approximately 126,000. But the Southern California Association of Governments, which is the regional planning agency for this part of Southern California, they're responsible for making predictions of growth. And their predictions based on these trends is that by 2040, just barely 20 years from now, you could have as many as 182,000 residents. And by 2045, 194,000. So this is really important to know. If it were level or dropping off, that's really important information too. But the fact that you're predicted to continue to grow, that's something that we need to make sure that we accommodate in the land use element in the best possible manner. So this takes us to your existing land use plan right now. You have an existing land use plan as part of the land use element, and that's part of what we'll be updating. But what I wanted to do is to just give you a brief overview of how your land use plan is organized right now. It's broken up into categories of land uses. So this yellowish golden color, this is residential land uses, and it includes very low density, which is only 2 dwelling units per acre. You've got low density, which is the typical residential neighborhoods in Victorville are in that low density range. You've got medium density, which can be townhouses and very small lot multifamily residential, and even some standalone single family residential, up to the high density, which are apartments. Then you also have a mixed density, which allows for infill development. And the residential uses make up 40% of the designated land in Victorville. The commercial and office uses, that makes up about 10% of the land uses. And the industrial uses, light and heavy industrial, that makes up a little over 5% of the land uses in the community. Then you also have a mixed use land use designation, which is a little less than 1%. And then here, another designation is it's public, institutional, and open space. And those are kind of lumped together, public and institutional being schools and government, things like that. And then open space and recreation. And that makes up a little less than 7%. So in your community, you also have a lot of specific plans. And specific plans are, you can think of them as, almost like, it's like a master plan for a particular area. And so it has its own land use plan and its own set of zoning. And it can be, you can have an all residential specific plan. You can have a mix of uses in a specific plan. You can have one that's commercial. And you can have one that's like industrial and business. So for instance, your downtown, your existing downtown has a specific plan on it, as does the Southern California Logistics Airport. That's also in a specific plan. And that makes up around 37% of the designated land in your community. For the most part, as part of this update, we're not really going to be focusing on the specific plans except for one area in the city. For the most part, we're really going to be looking at these other land use designations. And we're going to be seeing, do these existing land use designations serve you for the next 20 years? Or are there some opportunities to add things, change things, maybe change densities and intensities? Are there some things that are missing? Are there some areas where we can make some changes to better get you to your future goal? And this is that table represented in map form. This is your existing land use map. And the purple shows all the areas in purple. That's the mixed use. I mean, that's the specific plan areas. The areas in this light, this beige to the tan, to the darker tan and brown, that's all residential. The lightest color is the lowest density, and the darkest color is the highest density. And you'll see all the red following along many of the major corridors and along the I-15 corridor. That's commercial and business. And then you also have industrial. Here's some light industrial and heavy industrial in these areas, as well as some open space and some institutional uses kind of scattered throughout. One of the really interesting things about this map is you look at the map and you think, oh, that's how it's developed. Well, it's not necessarily how it's developed. It's how it's planned. Right now, approximately 66% of land in Victorville is still vacant. So that means as you're looking toward the future, we're not talking about making significant changes to areas that are already developed. But if you've got almost 2/3 of the land in the city that's still vacant, it does provide some opportunities for making some changes to, again, kind of take you to that future vision. I'm going to pause right here. And are there any questions? Is there anybody who has any questions before we move on?
As a reminder, if you have questions, you can use the raise your hand function. That should be in the lower toolbar. If you're on a computer or an iPad, you may have to, there's like 3 little dots. You may have to click that and hit more to get to the raise your hand function. We did have a message come through the chat from Dan. He said his opinion that housing slowed down did not change trends, but simply delayed them. I'm not showing anyone raising their hand to ask a question.
Okay, great. Just wanted to give folks an opportunity. Okay. So the housing element, I want to talk briefly about the housing element. There are workshops specifically regarding the housing element, but as I mentioned, it works so closely hand in hand with the land use element that I did want to touch on it, and you can really see how there is overlap. The housing element, just like it's one of the elements of the general plan, so it is a state requirement as well. The thing that's different about the housing element is that it must be updated every 8 years. And so, as I mentioned before, you're currently in that update cycle for by October 15th, you have to have adopted a housing element that will take you for another 8 years. And the purpose of the housing element is really for jurisdictions to show how they're planning for housing needs of residents of all income levels. And each city, each jurisdiction and county in the entire state of California is given what is called its fair share, if you will, of the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA. And that fair share is determined starts with the state allocating a fair share to regions like the SCAG region that I mentioned. And then each region takes their fair share, and then it gets divided up among all of its member jurisdictions. And the fair share for Victorville for this upcoming RHNA cycle is 8,146 units. So that's one of the things that we need to show that the land use element can accommodate. It needs to support the housing element. It needs to be consistent. So now is a really good time to be updating the land use element at the same time. Those 8,146 units, the city has to show how they're going to be accommodated, but they also have to show how those units will provide opportunities for people in a variety of incomes to have housing. From very low income, which is up to 50% of the median income for a family of 4. Low income, which is 50 to 80%. You see the very low is about 21%. Low is about 14%. Moderate is approximately 18%. And then above moderate is 46%. So those are all the kinds of things that we need to think about. And when we're looking at affordable housing, the state says that it's very, very difficult for families of very low or low incomes to be able to afford single family residences. So they're looking for being able to accommodate higher density housing for very low and low income residents. Moderate and above moderate, it can be either like a multifamily residential or a lower density single family residential. So these are things that we have to keep in mind as we're going forward as well. I just wanted to briefly give you an overview of the housing types in Victorville right now. Almost 80% of the residential units in your community are single family detached. So around a little over 30,000 units. And you'll see there's just a couple hundred single family attached. Multifamily, smaller unit, smaller multifamily of 2 to 4 units per development. That's about less than 5%. For the multifamily of 5 units or more, it's close to 11%. And then you've got about a little less than 5% of mobile homes. So there is as you can see, there's a really big gap between the single family residential and the higher density residential. And this gap, if you will, there are a variety of housing opportunities that can fill this gap that don't have to be just standard single family residential on 7,200 square foot lots or just multifamily residential in large multifamily residential developments. And this gap, if you will, planners call missing middle. It's missing middle housing. So I just wanted to go over with you briefly some examples of this missing middle housing that could kind of fill in the gap between single family, standalone single family, and large multifamily residential developments. So an example would be a duplex. You could put a duplex on a lot that's the size of a single family residence. There's triplexes or fourplexes, 3 or 4 units in a small development. Multiplexes where you've got around 5 to 10, and they can be, they can have individual entries, they could have one entry. Another type of housing, and it's actually kind of a mixed use, but it does provide living units, and that's called live work. And live work provides an opportunity for someone to have a business in the particular unit and then live above or behind the unit. So you don't, you just walk out one door and walk into another door and you're at work. Another opportunity, missing middle, is townhouses. And townhouses were row houses, 2 to 8 typically attached and adjacent. They're single family residential, but they just happen to be attached by one wall. And this is a little bit bigger. This is called a bungalow court. This can be a series of small units. They can either be attached or they can be standalone, like small single family units that are organized around a courtyard. So each one isn't on its own 7,200 square foot lot. They're organized together and they share some common space. And then finally, you move to courtyard apartments, which are even bigger yet, also organized around open spaces and courtyards. And I just wanted to show you a couple of pictures of some of these missing middle types of residential opportunities. So one, this is a typical duplex. You can see you've got a door here and a door here. If you really weren't paying attention, you might even think that that's a single family residence. They can fit very well in single family residential neighborhoods. Here is an example of some housing that is around a courtyard. These could be standalone single family residences, full 2-story residences that share property, and they're organized around common courtyards, common open spaces. This is obviously going to be a little bit less expensive than doing standalone single family residential. These even could be like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 unit multi-unit buildings, but they don't necessarily have to look like it. It looks like single family residential. It could be 2 or 3 or 4 units in here, but you get the sense of that scale and how it fits into a neighborhood. And here's an example of some small lot single family residential, also missing middle, but you can see they're small. The lots are narrow. They may not even be they could be on a standalone lot, their own lot, or they could be part of a larger development. This could be a street out here with small single family residences, or maybe on the other side, this could be a big courtyard out here. So it's possible that this could be a courtyard and you could have some of these small units around this courtyard. And finally, we've got another example, and this could be a type of a townhouse. You can see that this particular rendering, each one of these units looks different. It could look different or they could be the same, but they're single family residences that are attached. So they're townhomes, again, higher density. And something like this too, if you think about it, this could even be the way that they're designed. This could even be, you could have like 1 unit down on the ground floor. This could be the door to go in. You could have a door off that interior to a unit here, 1 there, stairs going upstairs, a unit here and a unit here. So you wouldn't necessarily know by looking at it whether it's individual dwelling units or whether they're, row houses, or whether there could be 2 here, let's say, as an example, or even 4, and you wouldn't necessarily know it. So how something is developed is as important as the density. I'm going to pause right now, and would be really interested to hear what you all think if some of this this type of missing middle residential, do you think that this is a good idea in Victorville and as you're planning for the future? And Melissa has a poll. So the question is, do you think missing middle housing is a good idea for Victorville? Yes or no? Or not sure?
And we'll leave it open for about a minute or so. So we'll keep it open for about 20 more seconds or so. It looks like about 50% of people have responded. All right, I'm going to end the poll.
Okay. So of the folks who responded, we've got about 75% saying yes and 25% saying not sure. And no one's saying no, so that's a good thing. It definitely sounds like it's something that is appropriate to explore. And I can understand too, just because these are missing middle types of development, you might be thinking, it may be a good idea, I'm not sure it's a good idea, because it might depend on where it's located as much as the type of housing itself. So those are all the kinds of things that we'll be looking at as we're moving forward on the land use element. Okay, let's move to the next slide here. I want to talk a little bit too about another, it's a development trend, but it's definitely another opportunity for communities, and that's mixed use. There's a couple of kinds of mixed use. Oftentimes when people hear mixed use, they think of this type of development. It's called vertical because it's stacked on top. So mixed use is residential mixed with another type of development, typically retail, typically office, but it can be other types of uses too. It could be schools, it could be medical, different types of health facilities. But the idea here is that on the ground floor, along the street level, you've got your retail and your office space, shops, restaurants, things like that, where people want to access them on the ground level. And then above, you've got multifamily residential. And that definitely provides an opportunity for people to live and work, to live near where they get their, where they do business. If it's kind of the neighborhood, local community serving types of uses. If I recall from the poll, a lot of people really enjoy going out to eat. And it would be really nice if this was a restaurant down here and you lived here, you could just walk down to the restaurant. And you can see here that this is a fairly decent sized street. This is another vertical mixed use. This one is also 3 stories. It looks a little bit more traditional, more like it could fit into a traditional downtown area. The streets are a little bit narrower. Again, it has a sidewalk across the front. It looks like some awnings and things. I could even see some tables and people sitting outside eating. So these are some examples of mixed use. This is a live-work unit, and as I mentioned before, in the missing middle, it really does fall into 2 categories because it's residential uses, but it's also a mix of uses. This is an example where you could say that this could potentially be maybe an office or a hair salon, a restaurant, and then the person who owns this and works above. So that is that live-work type of mixed use. And you can see, because of the size and scale, that can fit into a lot of areas. It works very well for infill development. And it's also a way to kind of to activate a space. There's another kind of mixed use, pardon me, the higher intensity mixed uses, you see those a lot in larger communities or where space is very limited. But mixed use, kind of what they call horizontal mixed use, where it's not on, where residential is not on top, but it's next to or beside or in the vicinity, that's starting to become more popular in less built up areas. This is an example of a horizontal mixed use. This is a place that I've been before on numerous occasions. And as you can see here, this is commercial use. This is a commercial center, and it's got two-way drive aisle, and all the way down this side, there's also commercial uses along here. There's more commercial behind it. There's a Trader Joe's, it could be a Vons, it could be Food for Less. You could have a variety of different types of uses here, shops, restaurants. And then you see over here, right across the street, this is multifamily residential. So it's all within a community. It's not stacked on top of each other, but these folks who live here can walk to the grocery store. They can walk to a store. They can walk to a restaurant. And here is the same center. This is taken kind of back here, looking out toward, this is the commercial piece over here, and that's looking out toward the multifamily residential. So there's a lot of residential around here. It's under construction right now, as you can see down in this bottom. This is taken from back here looking forward. So this is the back of that building, and a lot more residential down in here. So you have residential neighborhoods right next to commercial development, all in one area. So this is an example of a horizontal mixed use. So it doesn't have to be on the same piece of property, although it could be. It could be in proximity. And you can really see how this frees people up if you only have one car, or you only want one car, you want to get rid of a car, save some money, save that insurance every month, or maybe you've got someone who is older who doesn't want to drive anymore. They can still access these types of services without having to feel like they have to get in the car to go there. So these are a couple of examples of horizontal mixed use. So the vertical mixed use and the horizontal mixed use. So I'm going to pause right now, and we're going to do another poll and be really interested to see if you think that mixed use is a good idea for Victorville. Is that something that you could see in Victorville somewhere? Maybe not everywhere, but in certain areas. And so I will pause right now and ask you to fill out the poll.
We'll keep it open for about a minute or so. It looks like we have about 40% of respondents so far. Patricia, we did get a few comments in the chat.
Okay.
Dan has said it's a great idea, especially with commuters and two-income earners. Has been done successfully all over the country. Great examples close to home include Chino, Upland in Ontario.
Good to know.
Stephanie also said mixed use is definitely needed, especially if we're going to reduce green gases. Our air quality here is poor. And if we are going to maximize commercial spaces that are currently underutilized, it's a great solution to build more housing to meet existing demand and better utilize our space. All right, I'm gonna close the poll.
I think that's a really good point too. Some cities are starting to look at mixed use because, as we talked about earlier, with more, if the trend continues and there's more online shopping, or even if it doesn't go to more online shopping, we've got almost 25% of shopping being online. We've all seen vacant commercial buildings, and sometimes it's hard to fill those spaces. Oftentimes people want to build new. So what do you do with maybe some of these shopping centers that have some areas that are underdeveloped now? So that could be an opportunity to put in some some residential in the area, and then you've actually created a mixed use area where it used to only be commercial. Okay. Thank you for that, and I'm going to move on. So all the things that we've talked about, we've got trends, we have things that we need to be aware of, we have things that the state is telling all communities that we need to do. You are a community that is growing, and the one thing that we know for sure is that change is inevitable. The question is, how do we ensure that that change occurs in a way that reflects the best hopes and dreams of the community itself? We want to make sure, as we're looking at trying to figure out how change can occur in a way that is good for everyone, that we're including as many all segments of the community. So folks of different income levels, different family sizes, different ages. You know, you may be younger with a young family, but you may have parents, you know, you've got empty nesters, they may still be working, but they don't have kids at home, or you've got young adults in your family who are just wanting to move out, but don't want to or can't afford to do single family residential. We've got senior citizens. The community as a whole, I mean, the country as a whole is aging. So that's something to think about too, our senior citizens. So we want to make sure that that change, as we guide that change, that we're really trying to take into account the entire community's thoughts on this. So how do we do that? What we're going to do tonight is we're going to focus on visioning. This is the place where I stop talking and that we start listening to you. So the visioning really, very simply, is the act of imagining the future. So the vision says, this is where we want to go. The plan, the general plan, and the various elements, they're the roadmap. They tell us how we'll get there. What we're wanting to know from you all this evening is, where do you want to go? How do you see your community over the next 20 years? And what's going to be really important for you? And to let us know that, so that we can make sure, as we're preparing some ideas to bring back to you later for concepts and options, that we get it right. You don't want just consultants going away and preparing a plan for you. We want to hear what you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the rest of this session, and we're going to ask you to provide some information, some input to us. And we've got 4 questions, and we'll give you an opportunity. If you're comfortable, you can raise your hand and Melissa will call on you, and you can tell us verbally what you like, or if you're not comfortable or it's just easier for whatever reason, you can write it in chat, and we'll be monitoring chat too. So what we're asking for is for you to imagine Victorville in 2040. That's kind of the next planning period for our land use element update, is imagine your community in almost 20 years. What would you say makes Victorville unique? All communities have certain degrees of uniqueness and differences and things that make them special. What do you think makes Victorville unique? So if anybody has hands raised, Melissa will call on you. And then we have Claudia and Katie, and they're going to be monitoring chat, and they'll be jumping in and making comments as well. I mean, they'll be commenting, they'll be reading to us some of the things that come up.
And as a reminder for everyone to use the raise your hand function, you do have to have the most recent version of Zoom. If you're on a PC, it should be in the bottom toolbar. And then if you're on an iPad or device where you don't see that, there should be a little button that says more, or there's 3 little buttons, and you can click that, and that should get you to the raise your hand function. We got a hand.
All right, good.
All right. So this is going to be Paul.
Okay, okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Paul.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Okay, I guess what comes to mind for me when you talk about the uniqueness of the city, which I mean has compelled me to stay here, is the location. I mean, Victorville is pretty much centrally located to everything. You know, everything's within an hour or so, traveling wise, as far as, you know, the mountains, the ocean, Las Vegas, you know, attractions down the hill. So that was, you know, that's one thing that's kind of compelled me to stay here. Of course, I grew up here and stuff, but yeah, to remain here. So that's, you know, to me, that's what comes to mind when you talk about uniqueness of the city. One of the things. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Have any other hands raised or anybody writing in chat?
I don't have anyone raising their hand. Dan responded that there is ample land available to plan it right to capitalize on anticipated growth.
Mhm.
He does not have a microphone, so he will be speaking with us through the chat function.
Okay.
Commissioner Wells, are we going to be opening it up to the commissioners? Because Commissioner Wells did respond in the chat, but I didn't know if she's allowed to unmute herself and speak.
Yeah,
Commissioner Wells,
definitely.
you can
Mhm.
unmute yourself and speak.
Yes, definitely.
Well, in the length of time that I've lived in Victorville and traveled here for many, many years, and through here, going in different locations to the mountains, to Nevada. I have family that lived in the desert areas. I always found Victorville to be unique because you can go in any direction and you're going somewhere special. If you're headed east, you're going maybe to the mountains. If you're going west, eventually, or even south, you're headed towards the beach into Los Angeles, which isn't that far away. And so it makes people want to be here. It was part of the reason why I even came here, because I knew I could travel and housing was affordable. So I think with what's going on now is a great benefit to the city and will make even it more unique than what it already is.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anything in chat?
I have a comment.
Yes, please.
Okay. What makes Victorville unique is the fact that it does not have high density. So we're going to have a little bit of problem with that over the years. People come up to the high desert for affordable housing and space. They're tired of the crowd. They're actually tired of mixed use vertical type of density. People nowadays, all you got to do is drive through a neighborhood in Victorville. There, each unit, each home are parking 5-6 cars at the home. Now, those were some excellent examples of the mixed use vertical and what have you. I have 2 boys that actually live in mixed use vertical. They own homes that are on top of businesses, one in Oakland and one in Eureka, which is very old, but they still have that there. The thing, I just don't, I didn't see any parking at those locations. I know you can't show everything, but where are people to park? Now, if we're in the big city, then I can understand using public transportation more and walking to do all your business, your shopping, what have you. I just don't see that. I see Victorville struggling with that over time. Now, I know we're talking about up to, you mentioned 2040. Things obviously can change, but people are not coming to Victorville to buy a home for density. They want exactly the opposite. They're looking for something wide open with property to park their RV, to park their boat, to park their 4 or 5 cars. So I think Victorville will struggle with this, at least in my lifetime. I won't be around forever. But I do like all those examples you gave. And like Scott mentioned on chat, I think our original plan 20 years ago for the Old Town area was actually for mixed use. It was going to be built that way. It would have been excellent, but at the same time, it's going to be difficult to build those kind of things in an area such as Old Town, where crime is extremely high and poverty and homelessness. I just don't see people, no matter what you build down there at this point in time, will be a difficult trade-off. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very good points. Anyone else?
I'm not showing anyone else.
Okay.
Oh, it looks like Stephanie just sent something through the chat. We need housing for our millennial growing population.
Okay.
Affordability and place setting. We need access to local jobs, and if we don't have them, then we need transit that connects us down the hill. We need affordability everywhere in the city, including Old Town Victorville.
Great, thank you. Shall we move on? We don't have any more hands raised. Okay, let's move on. So again, imagine Victorville in 20 years. If you could list 2 things, if you only have one, you can. If there are a couple of more things you'd like to list, that's fine. But we're looking for two or so things that you like the most about Victorville, and you want to remain the same in 2040.
Well, I'll jump right in on that.
Okay.
Victorville has beautiful parks. We have excellent parks. And I think our city does a fantastic job taking care of our parks, accommodating all the youth sports and all we have. Victorville, in my opinion, is a 10 for the parks. The other thing is space. So obviously I'm a space person. And like I said, you can go into any of these neighborhoods and I'm willing to bet almost 20% of them are parking their RVs. So people come up here to stretch their arms and legs.
Very good. Anyone else?
Stephanie sent the mountains, green space, and sunsets are her favorite things and would like to remain the same in 2040.
Okay. Great.
Paul Marsh, I have him raising his hand to speak.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Probably one of the most important things for me is I would like to see the air quality. Right now we have pretty good air quality. I don't want to, of course, with growth and, more industry and all that, a lot of times it starts lacking in that, we start getting some, so I guess some downplay or whatnot in air quality. So, that's one of the main things. The reason why I say air quality is because in the military, I lived in areas that were more humid. I have children. One is handicapped. He has bronchitis and things of that nature. But in those areas that was more humid and the quality of air was not so great, he stayed in the hospital at least 1 to 2 weeks out of every month. Since we've moved back, since I've gotten out of the military and we've moved back here to home, he's not been sick. He hasn't been in the hospital at all besides for checkups. So air quality is very important. So as we grow, that's one thing that I would like to see, remain. The second thing, pretty much Vice Chair Harriman pretty much mentioned it. The parks, my children love the parks. I like the parks. So, those type of things I would like to see maintain, the value it has now.
Great, thank you very much.
So a couple of the comments that that came in the chat. One suggestion was to prohibit RV and boat parking in streets and in front yards. And another comment talked about the market dictating when families want larger yards. Builders will provide it. There can be all-inclusive zoning that allows for larger lots. However, we cannot provide affordable housing on larger lots.
Thank you.
Tricia, if I could just make a clarification to kind of bring you back to some of the points you made about our housing element, so everyone can get an understanding of what the city is going to be forced by the state to implement. It's not really our choice. Even if the community at large said, we only want to zone single family homes with RV parking, the state would not approve our housing element and then could fine the city following that unless we come into compliance. So even though that, the American dream of owning a single family home with space to park extra vehicles is something that will accommodate for, and it's kind of the vast majority of most of the housing, the regional housing needs that we need to provide over the next year. But just within the very low to low income ranges, we need to provide over 2,800 units, plan for them to feasibly be built within the next 8 years. So that's roughly 35% of the overall housing stock that we're trying to plan for over the next 8 years. That's something that the state is forcing the cities to comply with. So I think that, obviously some higher densities aren't going to be appropriate in certain areas of the city, but I just want to make it clear to the audience that the city in a way is forced to accommodate the higher densities, which are in return at a more affordable price, so we can hit these RHNA numbers that the state mandates that we plan for. So just wanted to insert that just as we're going through this further. As much as I'd like to just listen to the thoughts of the community, we are held to what the state requires us to plan for. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Now that's very important. So we've got, one of the things that we'll be thinking about is the balance of land uses. Obviously, retaining single-family residential is very important to the community, but we'll also need to be looking for locations for this higher density residential and how to go about implementing it. And that may be one of those opportunities for mixed use. That may be one of those opportunities for putting some multifamily residential near the commercial areas, especially if there's some, big box that's gone out of business, for instance. So those are some of the kinds of things that we'll be thinking about and looking at as we move forward with the land use element and the housing element, is what's appropriate and where is it appropriate.
And Patricia, we have one more comment in the chat,
Right.
and it kind of goes back to the topic we were talking about just a little bit ago, but it talks about allowing for car, boat, and RV storage lot for like having a dedicated space, I think, for every 1,000 homes. And then have new home buyers sign a disclosure that there's no storage allowed in front yards or streets. And I'm sorry, I don't know what SBL stands for, but it's
Spring
another.
Valley Lake.
Pardon me?
Spring Valley Lake.
Okay, thank you. So they apparently do that and it works. And then there's another comment about a number of neighborhoods or residents are paying between 40 and 50% of their income for housing. We need to meet all our residents' needs and support families that are housing insecure. Also, the largest working population that's growing is the millennial population. So we need to build for the needs of this growing population. This includes affordability, access to green space, which doesn't always have to be a huge backyard. Like the commissioner said, we have nice parks. And thinking about zoning to create employment opportunities. And then one more comment about the storage lots. Dan said there's a plethora of investors who would build the storage lots.
Can I add to
Good to
that?
know.
Can I add to that?
Oh, absolutely.
The city of Victorville has been inundated with storage, which is a good thing. But at the same time, for instance, Spring Valley Lake is an HOA. So much easier to make the rules. But if I'm correct, when I bought my home 32 years ago on a planned unit development, I signed documents of some type, it's been a long time ago, that I could not park an RV in my front of the home. Well, that's something we need to address in our city because it's not we don't have an ordinance for that. And that's something definitely to look at. Another thing is some of the developers, I think it would be a great idea if they, with the DIs, with a developer improvement, of course, they're investing in the parks and things like that. How about a large place for the people who own homes in that housing tract so they can park their RVs? I think that's attractive. But anyways, that's my thought.
Great, thank you.
And there's one more comment about the problem is that that code enforcement says it's a civil issue and will not enforce. So.
That's actually not correct. If you're parking your RV in the street and code enforcement, you're going to get a citation. So yeah, that's not a civil issue.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
I have Paul Marsh raising his hand to speak.
Okay.
Just a quick question. When we talk about the housing for the low income, providing more, like what Scott said, Just for clarification for me, when we're talking about housing to accommodate, different levels of economic, people's economic situations, it doesn't necessarily mean that the city has to build a lot more apartment complexes, right? I mean, the city can, like in some of those illustrations, where they had like the bungalow style homes, we have audience members talking about the millennials, and stuff, to where we have, bungalow style homes, duplexes, things of that nature. I mean, that would satisfy state requirements, wouldn't it? I mean, if it's constructed with a certain, I guess, element in mind, or whatever, for the lack of better words, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to have a bunch of apartment complexes going up, right? Because the reason why I asked that question is because a lot of it too, what I look at is, along with this growth, is the city of Victorville, we already experienced enough crime. So to me, my thought process is, when we start building these large, more apartment complexes, low income, moderate income, whatever, it draws a certain element into the city. So couldn't it be something other than that would accommodate what the state requirements are?
With the state, it comes down to density, to be able to show that you can accommodate all of the housing. So many of those examples that I showed that were that missing middle, they probably could accommodate some of the, like, moderate income, definitely, possibly low income, depending on how high of a density it is. But when you get to very low income, it's very, very difficult to do something like a duplex, or you almost need the density that's comparable to an apartment to be able to provide the adequate density for affordable housing. It has to be, the affordable housing developers have to be able to make it pencil out, if you will. And they typically rely on a variety of funding mechanisms. So that's usually why they look for a little bit higher density. But there's definitely a range. So it goes from single family residential to the multifamily residential. But as I mentioned, it's just as important how something is developed as the density. So there are things that cities can require if someone is doing a higher density multifamily residential development. It can be designed in a way that really looks for ways to make that development safe. Having sight lines, having the way that the buildings are oriented, having open spaces where the open spaces are not kind of tucked away. People can look out of their units and they can see the kids playing, they can see people out and about. So how something is developed is often as important as the density of the development itself. So it's kind of a continuum from the state's perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a couple more comments in the chat. One talking about how for sale townhomes are very popular, and they're usually controlled by an HOA. And another comment is that Vegas has very desirable 8 to 12 unit per acre for sale homes, as does Upland. So some examples of places.
Great. And when we come back we're going to have another workshop in May, and those are some of the kinds of things that we'll be bringing back. Hearing your input tonight, we can bring back some of those options and what some of those different densities look like too. Sometimes it's really hard to envision what a higher density, how high is high density? Well, again, it depends on the community. So we can bring back some of those examples and maybe identify some particular areas or some options where those could potentially go.
And we have one
Go
more
ahead.
comment. Higher density, well, a couple. Higher density isn't necessarily the problem. We need to invest in the people as well. For example, a high density complex can have services that families need, like childcare. These commercial multifamily units can have employment and job training, as well as educational facilities. And proper planning of housing with the right service and amenities is key. Well, it's a comment about affordable housing density. Another comment is, let's take a bus trip to Chino and Upland for examples. And another comment, facts are that over 80% of crime emanates from rentals. So.
I think ideally, everyone wants to be able to own a home. If they want to be able to own a home, it would be ideal for people to own a home. And it can be, you can own a condominium. It doesn't have to be a single family residence. So those are some of the kinds of things that we're looking at too. Some of those units that we showed you, there was no reason why those couldn't be owned. They don't just have to be rentals. But you want to really be able to accommodate the range of folks in the community who may not want to or may never be able to afford to purchase something. On the other hand, maybe they really want to purchase something, but a single family residence is out of their reach. Maybe some of these smaller, small lot residential might be something that they could do, or a townhome, for example. So really trying to provide that range of housing opportunities. It's good for communities.
And one more comment in the chat. Appreciate your comment, Patricia. Diversity for home ownership is also needed.
Thank you. Anything else?
I'm not showing anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay. And if you think of something later on too, we can jump in. I just want to make sure that we touch all of these topics. So if you think of something and we've moved past it, please feel free to make a comment. Don't feel like you lost your only chance. We're really here to listen to you, and we just thought this might be a way to elicit information. So don't be shy. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We've talked about what's unique, what's really important to have. Some of these things we've touched on a little bit, but again, thinking about 2040, thinking about from now till 2040, you don't have to wait till 2040, obviously, but in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what would you say is currently missing that you would like to see or have in Victorville by 2040?
We need some better jobs. If we're going to bring those kind of variety of homes and places to live, our area needs some jobs. And I think e-commerce is the path of the future. If, as an example, Eastvale, new city, fairly new, and they have Amazon there. That city is thriving, and it's 10 years ago it was all cows. So I think what's currently missing in the city of Victorville or even our region are good, well-paying jobs, not fast food jobs and the like.
There's a couple of comments also that I want to read, Patricia, from the chat.
Yes, great.
A couple people talking about educational opportunities, adding those in,
Okay.
either higher education or vocational training, a water park, and things like more walking trails, looking at transportation, bike trails, access to parks.
Okay. Anything else? Any other comments?
I'll make a comment. I
Great.
think the tourism of Route 66 is missing. Used to bring in a lot of, there's no businesses for them to go to anymore, but if that were some kind of way to be reestablished, would help Victorville to boom again, bringing in the tourism of Route 66.
That's great. And that's one of the things that makes your community unique, the fact that Route 66 goes through it. That's great.
Couple more comments from the chat are, again, looking at, making sure that there's a qualified workforce that's educated, pocket parks like the one in Eagle Ranch, and more votes for walking and biking trails, an exploration center like the Discovery Science Center. And I think that's what.
Okay, great. Those are really good ideas.
As I see more coming through, major employment centers, warehouse, industrial, and e-commerce. Particularly maybe as an option for live work. So a lot of potential for live work in the city.
I have one more comment. I'm sorry, I'm talking so much.
Oh, no, it's great.
I
Thank
missed
you.
something, and this may not apply, but we need more hospital beds in our community.
Okay.
Okay, we need another hospital in not only our community, but the entire high desert region. And those are actually good paying jobs if you want to look at it that way. But that is one thing we're faltering with. I saw a comment about having parks in the housing tracts, and we have recently approved some housing developments where the developer impact fees were to go for small parks in the housing tract. I think that's a great idea also. And someone made a comment about better access to parks. We have excellent access to our parks.
I'll make
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make one more comment. I don't know the answer to my own question. Do we have any specialty of vocational training? Because if we were highlighted as an area where people can come and be vocationally trained, it'll bring people in to have a career. But then they have to have somewhere to be employed in that career. So maybe it would bring employers, if they know that they have the potential of career-minded people that have been vocationally trained. So I think there was a place there on 7th that used to have some type of vocational training. I'm not really talking about that one in particular, but it just comes to mind that people, they have to survive, and they can only survive if they have a decent income so that they can afford the dream of their home, or the home of their dream, whichever way you want to say it. And you know, maybe rent if they can't own, but rent something nice that they can take care of, and they feel that they are contributing to society and to the community. That's my comment.
Great, thank you.
I'll read a few more things out of the chat. There's some more votes for vocational education, true vocational education. Also grocery stores in Old Town Victorville. And then within mixed use housing, establishing a large community center with a park and recreational use, educational services, trails, and open spaces to use for each community to produce jobs within the mixed use housing community, maybe incorporating e-commerce for the mixed use, which also brings community pride and support within that mixed use.
Yeah, a lot of mixed use communities, they almost function like mini villages within communities. Sounds like that's what the participant was talking about.
I do.
Anything else?
Hand raise. All right, Paul, you can have the floor to speak.
What's currently missing to that I would like to see come to Victorville, or Victorville have, would be a convention center. Something that, you know, something that large events, or, you know, would attract would attract resources from outside. So we have the land, we have the space. I know it's been kind of, you know, spitballed in the past, but that's what I would like to see, you know, by 2040, convention center.
Thank you.
That's an excellent one, Paul. The city of Paso Robles has an amphitheater. So yeah, a venue similar to that, I think is an excellent idea.
Yeah.
And then that would mean we would need to build hotels for people to stay. And when they stay, they need to have other things to do when they come for that type of entertainment. So more hotels would bring on more people.
I think that we have many people here still commuting, so I think transportation is still an issue, particularly for the people working down the hill. So we have to look, I guess, at major circulation issues to address this, because I believe people will still come here to live because of the cost of housing. Will work other places, but going down that 15 is a nightmare. So as soon as something can be done to maybe mitigate some of the problems with that'll help with quality of life issues up here.
In the chat, we're seeing support for that idea and also more support for the convention center idea as well.
Great.
And I would like to add to Vice Chair Harriman's comment related to a hospital. And I also saw in the chat that someone asked about St. Joseph's. So St. Joseph's is also now Providence, but about 8 to 10 years ago, St. Mary's at the time purchased roughly 100 acres on the southern end of the city. This is an area approximately a mile south of Restaurant Row right now on Amargosa. While we don't have a timetable for the construction of that hospital, Providence St. Joseph still owns that property. So with this land use update, there is an opportunity to look at that area and evaluate the current land use designations around this planned campus to look at making sure that we have appropriate zoning, appropriate densities adjacent to that facility, which we envision someday in the future would be an anchor tenant, so to speak, or some type of catalytic development that could spur additional growth in that area.
And one more comment from the chat that community centers are missing from every neighborhood. So incorporating those into all neighborhoods. And continuing developing Old Town and getting a four-year college. So lots of comments on education.
Great. These are all really helpful. Thank you. Anything else? We can move on. And as I said, if you think of something else, please jump in. So this leads us to our last question. And in some cases, it's a little bit of a, could be a little bit of an overlap, but are there some things that you would like to see improve by 2020? Things that it may not be missing, but that is already here and you would like to see improve? Is there anything that we haven't touched on that jumps to mind?
We have touched on it, but our Old Town area is there for us. I hope I'm around when it comes around, but that is going to be an excellent area, and the space is all opening up now. So we've had a homeless problem down there. We've had a lot of structures burned to the ground. There's a lot of open space. I just would hope that some developers are willing to spend money down there so we can get that off the ground.
Great. Thank you.
And in the chat, another comment about skilled labor. We need vocational training, community centers, make the difference, roadways, circulation, and then parking, no parking. I'm not exactly sure what that one means. Old Town, a clarification for Old Town.
Old Town, okay.
Yeah, hi, this is Mike Sarzinski, Senior Planner. Just want to let everyone know I've heard a lot about vocational training tonight, and just want to remind everybody there is a regional training center opening at SCLA shortly, run by VVC, and that's high quality manufacturing training at SCLA. Just want to let everybody know.
All right, I do have a hand raised, and Paul, you have the floor.
Okay, I was trying to unmute myself. I'm sorry.
That's
I was
okay.
pushing all kinds of wrong buttons. The two things, I mean, Vice Chair Harriman, he already covered the one thing I was thinking about as far as the downtown, Old Town, downtown, that area. One thing that we have, and I'm glad that we do have it, I would like to see it built on, and as far as improvements, is the Riverwalk area. I think that we could do a lot more with it as far as, concessions and, things that kind of sit along that Riverwalk. We may not, I always refer back to when I was in San Antonio. I mean, their Riverwalk is, it's gorgeous. I mean, you can spend all day down there. Victorville may not be able to do something like that, but I do think that we can do something a little bit more appealing to the Riverwalk area. So that's what I would like to see.
Thank you.
Several additional comments in the chat. One person said she's representing a professional sports organization. We wish for all of these ideas to be implemented and would love to help in any way. Also agree with bringing a college or academy to bring entertainment to Victorville would be a great push to building this forecast population and value of the community. So they represent the high desert area and they're called the High Desert Pumas. Other comment, would like to see the city embrace and establish history and legacy. So tying back to those, important things. George Air Force Base could house a museum. Said, like to see city leaders offer assistance or support. And someone asked if they appreciate being part of this forum, but would like to ask if there's another way to submit comments based on the questions brought up tonight. And if that's appropriate, how do we do that? And yes, that's a really good question. And we'll be talking about that next. So at the end of this visioning session, we're going to let you know other ways that you can also submit your feedback.
I have a hand raised. Valentine Godina, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so I see here that we were trying to have ideas to improve Victorville by 2040. What happened to the 20-year plan that we've been waiting on for over 30 years for Old Town? Did that get pushed out, or why do we have to wait till 2040 when we've been waiting for a 20-year plan that's been on the works for 30 years? Is this just another way to keep the city of Victorville just running around in circles? And how seriously are we in doing something for the city of Victorville when we have a planning commissioner that would like to destroy every bit of Old Town by bulldozing it? And every time we turn around, there's a new building being bulldozed. The old JCPenney has been bulldozed to the ground now. What are we going to have as a history to talk about? Are we going to get a couple of bricks and put them in a glass case and say this was part of Old Town Victorville? Where are we going with this? When are we going to really see some improvement and somebody really care about Old Town? Because this is just a start of what's going to be happening to the rest of Victorville. And the rest of Victorville needs to wake up and see what our leaders are doing to our town.
Vice Chair Harriman, I can respond shortly to that. I appreciate the comment from Mr. Godino. The plan for Old Town, yes, there was an original plan that never materialized over 20 years ago. However, the city has recently updated that specific plan, went through a comprehensive update a little over a year, maybe a year and a half ago now. It takes time to implement. Obviously, it's not in a place right now where you see things changing, but the city has continued to take steps to aid in its revitalization. Most recently, the city council approved a contract to start the formation of a community revitalization investment authority. This essentially is a redevelopment tool specifically for Old Town to take tax increment and use it for the redevelopment of Old Town. So we share in Mr. Godina's thoughts bringing back Old Town. It does take some time though, but this update here is focused on our land use update, which is across the entire city. But I'd be happy to talk with Mr. Godina separately if he wanted to know more about Old Town specifically.
Thank you, Scott. Any other comments or?
There's another
thoughts?
couple of comments in the chat. One from Suzanne Schwab, as Scott mentioned, Providence St. Joseph Health is still a large landowner, and they would like to partner with the city on this effort and focus on health and planning efforts, including policies that will help improve community health. And she thanks the city for hosting an inclusive and open process. And then another comment, Old Town will see significant development as development comes in and as the rest of the city grows. So I think the point of that is that it'll continue to develop as the city continues to develop and grow. And the point that the market drives development.
I'm not showing any more raised hands from any of the participants.
Okay. Well, this was all really, really helpful. Thank you so much. And what I'd like to do now is to just move on to what's going to happen next as we take all of this input and move forward. So we're in this phase here, collecting the initial public input. We've got the land use element workshop from this evening. And as I said, this was just really wonderful information across the board, very, very helpful. We've got the housing element workshops, obviously, as Scott mentioned, and I mentioned before too, it's really important to be able to make sure that the land use element and housing element are working together. It's more than just identifying some sites where housing can go. We want to make sure that it really fits within the overall fabric of the community. So we'll continue to be working hand in hand with our other partner consultants on this process. We also have some surveys, and I don't know if any of you who are participating this evening, if you've all taken the surveys, but if you haven't, that's another really valuable tool for us. And I'll give you the webmail address in just a moment. But we have a survey for housing and land use. There's a survey for safety, and then also one for environmental justice. And all of these pieces work together. So we're paying attention to everything as we're helping to work with the city to develop a plan. We also are doing some stakeholder meetings, just some one-on-one meetings. And so together, all of that information is really going to be informing the next step. And the next step is to prepare some draft land use concepts and alternatives. So based on the input that we've taken, integrating the data, the trends, incorporating those sites from the housing element, incorporating the input from this evening and the other elements, we're going to put together some draft concepts and alternatives to bring back for you, to let you to see what you think. Did we get it right? Are we moving in the right direction? Is there something that really resonates with you more than another alternative? So that is what we're going to be working on next. And by May 22nd, just over 3 months from now, we're going to be having another land use element workshop with the Planning Commission, who's so kind to host for us this evening. And so we'll be providing that information, and we would love to hear your feedback. Some of this information too, we'll be providing on the city's website for not only just the land use element, but for the other elements. So with that, I'm going to move to this next slide and be As I mentioned, we've got a couple of workshops. There's another one coming up, the housing element coming up on March 15th, then the land use element on May 26th. Please take those surveys, and you can find the surveys at vv.city/GP for general plan surveys. And then if you have any comments or questions, as one of the callers mentioned, if you think of something, even if you've had an opportunity to speak tonight and something else catches your, you think about, you think, oh, I really want to share that. Please go to planning@victorvilleca.gov and share your thoughts there. And the city staff monitors that. All of that information will get forwarded to us. And then the city also has a page on the city's website specifically for the general plan. And it's got these buttons that you can push if you're interested more about land use when we post additional things. They'll be there, the housing element, the safety and environmental justice, public meetings. The housing element workshop that we already had is posted on there. If you're interested in that, if you'd like to go back and listen to tonight's presentation will be posted. If you know somebody who maybe wasn't able to attend and would like the information, let them know that all of this information is available. And you can also get to the surveys from the city's website as well. And the city's website for the general plan is www.victorvilleca.gov/general plan update. So again, keep updated on what we're doing. Make sure you fill out those surveys. If you know somebody who's interested, or maybe who isn't even aware, but you know who would be interested, please turn them on to this. As many surveys, the more voices that we can hear, and from the broadest range of community members, the better that's going to be for our plan when we bring it forward to you. And with that, I guess I actually had these slides out of order. So what I'll do is I'll just stop right now and just say, is there anything else, any other questions, any other feedback that you want to share with us this evening before we turn it back over to the Planning Commission?
Patricia, I just wanted to point out that Katie uploaded the links to the surveys and to the chat. And
oh, great.
Yeah, if anyone's interested, it's a live link. You can just click right on it. It should take you directly to the surveys right now, if you haven't had a chance to fill those out. And she also added the email address and the link to the general plan update page on the city's website.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Katie. All right. All right, anything else? Well, again, we just really appreciate all your time and attention and all of the great input that you provided. This has been really wonderful. And I appreciate looking forward to hearing more from you. Use those questions and feedbacks and surveys and attend the other workshops that are coming up. And we look forward to seeing you again in May. And with that, Scott, I will turn it back over to you. Thank you again. Really appreciate all of your time and effort.
Okay, with that, I'd like to thank Patricia and Claudia, and let's not forget Katie, okay? I thank all three of you. That was excellent. I wish we had more participation. Maybe we can get the word out. 16 people is kind of disappointing, but we'll work on that. Anyways, thank you, ladies.
Right, thank you. Good night.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on, and Chair Kurth could not be here with us today, but he and Mayor Jones have sent along some kind words for Commissioner Wells, and let's watch that.
Do we want to play the video first, or would you like me to read Chair Kurth's statement first?
Let's go ahead and watch the video first.
Okay.
Denise, thank you for serving on our Victorville Planning Commission for the past 2 years. You brought your energy, skills, and talent to your role as a planning commissioner, and we're grateful for your dedicated service. We were fortunate to have someone with your wealth of government policy experience serving Victorville. On behalf of the entire City Council, I'm proud to present you with this street sign that was made by our Public Works crew. We hope you'll display it proudly and look upon your time in Victorville fondly. Again, Denise, we thank you.
Okay, I guess you can read Rob's comments.
Commissioner Wells, I wish I could have attended tonight's meeting to say goodbye to you in person. I'd like to say that it's been an honor getting to know you and serving with you on the Planning Commission. Your involvement and leadership has benefited our city. We are sorry to see you go, but we wish you success and abundance and happiness in your future endeavors. Thank you for your service. Sincerely, Rob Kurth, Chairman of the Victorville Planning Commission.
Thank you. Thank you to Rob.
Are there any other commissioners that would like to say a few words?
Yes, this Commissioner Cook Askins, I'd just like to say thank you to Commissioner Wells for her service. I haven't served on the commission very long, just a little bit shy of a month, but I have seen Commissioner Wells active in the community, and I know that she loves the city of Victorville, and we appreciate her for her tenure on the Planning Commission, and wish you the best of luck and many blessings.
Thank you. Very nice.
Anybody else?
Yes, yes. Commissioner Wells, I have known you for a few years, and I sure hate to see you leave, but I do wish you well and thank you for your service on this commission. And I just wish you all the best and Godspeed.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, I'm going to add to that. Denise?
Yes.
I find us unique because we both came to the commission at the same time. And me and my wife actually had the opportunity and the pleasure of going out of town to Planning Academy with you at one time, which was a great experience. And I want to thank you for everything you do in the community. And I know you are going to move out of the area, and I wish you could stay. And I hope your future is, the way you want to have it, but you're going to regret leaving Victorville. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
So, Denise, the floor is yours. If you'd like to respond or have anything to add, we'd like to hear from you before you go.
Well, yeah, it's really a heavy heart that I have to resign. And it's only because I have to move closer to my family. So I do have to move out of the city and out of the area, because I have really come to love Victorville and came over here many, many times, even before I lived here. So I'm very familiar with the city, and have gained so many friends, such as all of you. And but I have to say thank you to Dr. Rita Ramirez and the City Council for giving me the opportunity to even serve on the Planning Commission. It has been such a pleasure, and I've learned so much more than I probably would have ever known had I not been on the Planning Commission. Just a wealth of information that I cherish. Scott, he's a great manager. I just can't say just wonderful things about him. Always reliable, always knowledgeable, and I look up to him and his position. The staff of the Planning Commission are such a great people. I think they work hard to make the Planning Commission meetings the importance that they are, and made it easier for us as commissioners to understand what we had to make decisions on. From time to time, I do plan on checking on you guys, looking you up in the video, seeing what you're up to. So you'll see my name pop up. Maybe not every meeting, but quite a few, because I'm going to want to know what's going on in the city, because the city is growing. It has grown even since I've been here, and even before I've seen it grow. So anyway, to my fellow commissioners, I do wish you the best at the work that you're doing now and that you're going to do. I spent my time on the commission with Bob and with Rob and Paul and Larry, and they're such great guys to be on the commission with. So I wish everyone to be safe and healthy, and I'm going to miss being here, but I am moving soon. And thank you so much for all of your great comments to me.
Vice Chair Harriman,
There we go. I'm okay. All right, Denise, I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to be looking for your name. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now moving on to public comment. In accordance with the Brown Act, we'll now take time for the public to provide comments on items that were not listed on the agenda. Is there any members of the public here today that would like to provide public comment? Please use the right-hand function, and Melissa will call on you.
Yeah. Just as a reminder, the raise your hand function will be in your toolbar, or you may have to select the more button, or there's like 3 little buttons that you would click on, and that functionality should be there. Vice Chair Harriman, I'm not showing anyone raising their hand, and I did not receive any emailed public comment on this item or on any general items.
Okay. I guess we'll have presentation of reports by the commission members. Let's go ahead and start with Mr. Cook Askins.
I have no comments other than the presentation this evening was very informative, and I'm looking forward to the upcoming presentation in May.
Excellent. Mr. Thomas.
Okay, found that mute button. I too have enjoyed the workshop this evening, and I learned a lot, and it was very eye-opening, and it's always good to hear what the public think about these plans. So I'm looking forward to working on this and our future meetings. Thank you all for your support.
Okay, thank you. And Denise, you want to comment anymore?
Yeah, I think that presentation was excellent. Very, very understandable. The presenters did a good job, and I see a future in Victorville.
All right, then. I'm going to go ahead and add a couple things. Again, I thought they did an excellent job. This Zoom thing, I'm sure limits You know, a lot of it in person, of course, would be better. I'd also like to point out, again, I'm very disappointed in our community not getting involved and participating. At 120 plus thousand people, 16 people just is not cutting it. So if anybody can get the word out, that would be great. I would love to see some more community participation. Anyways, I guess with that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.